After failing massively with Ubuntu, we decided to try something else, something that seems to offer software RAID 5 and it should work better than Ubuntu, and that's Freebsd. So let's power on the server. So the boot process is obviously still very slow, no changes there, despite the fact that we changed the card, etc, etc. Yeah, that's just how it is with this server. Hopefully the newer models are a bit better in that regard, but I wouldn't hold my breath about it. Okay, so this is after BIOS has been reset. Let's do some initial configuration here actually. I decided to do a BIOS reset just to show how this can work. So these are the same 4 hard drives we had before, and we'll enter setup very soon now after all these annoying boot process things. And okay, here we are. The time will be set when we connect to the internet, so I will not be worried about that. Memory settings, no need to change anything there. Here we will enable virtualization technology. Since this server will be used for compute applications, it's actually better to set it for compute. If this was a database server, one will set it to I/O. And I think that's pretty much it regarding the CPU. I wouldn't change anything else, except power management, which I would set to operating system being able to control it. Modern operating systems actually have these power management features, and I think FreeBSD is one of them as well. And finally, let's turn off the F1, F2 prompt on error, so the boot continues uninterrupted. And finally, we need to use UEFI, because we'll be booting from the virtual drive, which is GPT partitioned. So I think it's better to be safe and just use UEFI. Might not be necessary, might actually work with BIOS, but if UEFI is supported, I don't want to take any chances. And that's it. We'll turn off Pixie boot later, or maybe we can do it right now. Just a moment. Pixie. Let's turn that off. This server actually lost some memory because I moved it to another server, so it has 48 gigabytes now instead of 64 or 80 or what we had. I have another server that needed more memory. This doesn't need so much, so I moved it. But it's going to be fine either way. I mean, that's like 2 gigabytes per core, which is obviously enough, and it's obviously enough for the purposes that this server will be used for. So now we have to detect the drives, we have to detect the network cards, and then boot the rest of the system. UEFI is enabled, so BSD is here on the front USB. It's connected. You cannot see it. I don't want to move the camera because I had such a hard time guessing this angle, so I don't want to move the camera. The BSD boot drive is in the front USB. That's going to be fine. Let's see if it gets booted first. Okay, the drive is blinking. It might get picked up first. Let's see. Okay, it seems that we actually got BSD booting. which is very nice. Apparently I skipped the loading screens, whatever they were. It's not BSD. That's not BSD, unfortunately. We'll have to retry this part. Cut! That's some obsolete stuff I have on the hard drive. It's ironic, once the setup starts, everything is very fast with these hard drives, so you're done very soon. But until the setup starts, you have to wait for this boot process to finish, and this is so annoying. Okay, UEFI is starting here. Let's see which options do we have. So these are the options that we have, which is very nice. We can see that we have some kind of weird boot options on device 1 and 2. That are the experiments from before. And we have the front USB, which is the BSD USB that we have here. Let's try this one. I'm not sure which one is correct. This device has some kind of DVD emulation. I'm not sure what does it do. Anyhow, we got Freebsd booting. Very nice, very nice. Okay, boot multi-user is the option that we need, so we can wait for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 seconds, or just press enter. I think that keyboard emulation is working fine here. I haven't tried. Anyhow, this is BSD in all its glory. It's actually a descendant of the original Unix, unlike Linux, which is Unix-like operating system. And it was developed initially at Berkeley, based on the Unix code from AT&T, and adopted for the needs of the universities. And then, after certain lawsuits, etc., it turned out that BSD had the right to actually license their code. The BSD project, which was owned by University of Berkeley, actually gained the right to release their code under a free license, and that code actually amounted to the entire Unix distribution. So that's how BSD appeared, and then FreeBSD appeared from the BSD itself. Okay, so it offers us a chance to use install, shell, or live CD. Obviously, I'll just install it. I think that graphics is actually quite good here, so you can even read the text, but I will be speaking anyhow, just in case something isn't visible. So BSD is very simple to install, just like Linux, but it isn't like super simple. It doesn't have the fanciest GUI installer. Some people like it, some people don't. I think it's just fine, so I have no problems with the installer being the way it is. Okay, so I'll just use the default key map. I would normally use creation key map, but this is a server, so I'll just not do any complications. I need to use the hostname, so let's call it Hephaestus. In Greek, it's written like Hephaestus, like this. I think this is how it should be. Okay, which components will we install? Well, we can just put everything. I think I have enough space, so we can just put everything. It's going to take some more time to download all this from the internet, but we can just put everything. It's fine. Most of these things are not needed, but we have like 2.7 tera of space, so this is like a few gigabytes. Nobody cares. Okay, some files will be downloaded from the internet. That's fine. The internet card is the first of 4 Broadcom cards. I'm very happy with the server and these 4 cards that it has. It's very nice to know that you can put different virtual machines on different networks if you want. Yes, let's use the DHCP to configure the IP address for this interface, and I think DHCP will succeed very soon. Yes, the gigabit link is up, so the order is the same as in Linux, which is good. I don't use IPv6 at home, so that's the way things are. Okay, this is my home address. Okay, the main site is actually fine, but we will just use a European site of sorts. Let's find some European site. Maybe Austria is a good choice, or Germany. Germany is occasionally a good choice because it has quite good internet connection to Croatia. I'll just use the German site. Here is the complicated part. Partitioning is always the complicated part, but it's especially complicated if you want to do something fancy. The reason why BSD is popular is actually because ZFS is seamlessly integrated with it. So I might use UFS, but if I want to do fancy RAID like RAID 5, that's ZFS job. And you'll see how easy it is to do these things. So I go to automatic ZFS. I tell it that I want a pool that has RAID Z1. That is RAID with one drive that has redundancy parity bits. So this is RAID 5. It's just differently named. And all I have to do after that is add my 4 hard drives, and magically everything else is automatically configured. Let me quickly show you how this works. So I'll say, let's say that I have 48 gigabytes of RAM. So 2 gigabytes of swap is quite a small amount. Let's put 8 gigabytes of swap just to be sure. I'm not sure whether I need any swap at all, but just to be sure, let's do it. I don't need any encryption. Can I mirror swap? Yeah, why not? Let's do it. Do I need encrypted swap? I don't need encrypted swap. Does mirror swap make sense? Not really, because you don't care whether swap remains or not. But on the other hand, there is another thing where reading from swap is faster when you have multiple disks that you can read from, and the disks are going to be unused anyway. So since the partition sizes on all disks have to be the same, if you don't mirror swap, you are basically not using that space. So I'll just mirror swap, and that's it. So I don't have to configure anything else. This is everything, and I'm done. BSD is going to automatically put UEFI partition on all the disks. It's going to automatically put swap partition on all disks. It will choose the sizes. Everything else is going to be done automatically. So after I proceed with the installation, everything is going to be automatically configured. Obviously, my disks, the contents of my disks are going to be destroyed, which is what I actually want. I mean, whatever experiments were there before are not necessary anymore. But BSD takes care of everything else. So this is very nice compared to Ubuntu, where we had to do everything manually, think how big partitions you want, where do you want to put different things, etc., etc. Here everything is done automatically, and it will just warn you that you're going to destroy the space on your drives. Okay, so it's downloading some extra files from the internet. This is actually quite fast because German mirror is quite fast. Let's take a short break until this is done. An interesting feature of FreeBSD is the Part3, which is very similar to the Gen 2 if you have used Gen 2, but if not, then just as an idea. Like every other operating system, obviously, FreeBSD has packages, but you're free to build everything from source. And you have the patches and the make files specific for FreeBSD actually bundled, so everything is seamlessly building from source. And other people guarantee that this is actually working correctly. Okay, so here FreeBSD installer has a sort of a command line interface for asking the names of the users, the groups, the passwords, etc. It's not actually bundled. It's not actually integrated into the installer because these same utilities are actually used later for configuring these things. It might not be as nice looking as Linux, but it's just as functional, so it's going to be fine. So I'm being asked for the root password. Let's put 1234 for now. Let's put 1234 for now, and I'm good. Okay, so is my machine's clock set to UTC? Yes, it is, and it will be after we sync it. Obviously, I'm in Europe, and the country is obviously Croatia. So Central European summertime. We are presently in 2018 because we reset the BIOS. I'll just skip these things, and I will. And that's a good question actually here. So here you are asked which other daemons like the process running in the background you want to install. And you probably don't need many of these, but I will use the NTP, which will synchronize my clock on boot time, and I will use NTPD as well, because I will be able to provide this service to another server in the network, so it doesn't have to rely on the outside servers. I will use the power daemon because I configured BIOS to have the OS based power configuration. I will use the mouse daemon because then I will be able to use the mouse in the console with tools that support this. It actually works very well. It's surprisingly how powerful consoles are, and I'm not sure what this thing is. I presume it's something about DNS, and just to be safe, let's put that as well. Anyhow, most of these things you can do without, but I have enough space, I have enough power here, so I'll just put all of them just in case, and I actually need most of them. Okay, so these are the hardening options. They are all very interesting. You can even configure them later, and this server is a bit special, so this server will not be having users logging in, so I'll be the only user. But anyhow, if you have many users and you don't want them to see each other's configs, you might want to hide user IDs, group IDs, and jails from other users that are unable to see what. So your normal user is unable to see what the other users are doing in that case. You might want to do this. I don't want to do this because I will be the only person using this computer, so it's just complicated things for me. But anyhow, these things are quite useful in my opinion, and you might want to read the documentation to see which ones you need. They're all optional, obviously, but you might like some of them or none of them or whatever. I would recommend to look into the first three, obviously, and then I would also look into clearing the temporary file system. I'll just go on without enabling any of them as I explained. Do I want to add users? Obviously I do. I want to add myself. So let's do it now. My username will be Vedran. And I will be, this is my full name, default user ID. My group is my group with the same username. Let's not invite me into any other groups. We can configure these later. And login class is going to be default for now. And I will use TC shell, which is the most powerful shell that is offered on Freebsd, and much better than the default one. And my home directory is obviously going to be home Vedran, and permissions are default. Password-based authentication, yes. I don't want to use empty password. I don't want to use a random password, and I'll just use 1234 for now, and we'll change this a bit later. And I don't want to lock my account. This is correct. This is fine. And Vedran has been successfully added. I don't want to add another user, so this is it. And as you can see, we are back on the first screen of the installer. We are back to the central hub of the installer, would be a better way to say it. And here you can see that you can configure all the things that you saw before. And I'm actually not going to do anything except installing the handbook. Handbook can be read online, obviously, but while we are here, let's just do it. I'll use English version because I don't know any other language besides English and Croatian, so this is a very small thing, so it's not a problem. It's like a few megabytes just to have it offline, just in case. So just in case. You don't want to lose these things. So it's 44 megabytes, which with my connection speed is quite a small thing. Okay, very nice. So we are done. configuration has been applied, my user has been created, the file system obviously has been configured, everything has been installed, the daemons have been set up, and question is, what do we do now? Would you like to open the shell? The BSD is asking me whether I want to do any final configurations manually. I actually don't. And let's reboot it. So hardwares have been detected. It's trying to configure Druck. And let's see how does BSD boot. Hopefully we did everything correctly. This should boot now. I haven't yet removed the hard drives. All hard drives are here. I just want you to see the default configuration, which is here. Just to prove that keyboard is working, let's see this. And here you have Freebsd booting, and I will be able to log in after it boots, which is going to be quite soon. On the first boot it actually generates the SSH keys and etc. I'm not sure, but there are a number of things that it has to generate. I'm not sure if it has SSH in the default installation. I won't claim that it does. It might, but it might not. I don't really remember. I always configure it with SSH and some other things after the installation, so it's really hard to say. So you can read some of these messages. It's configured the network card, it's detecting the USB devices, detecting the hard drives, etc., etc. So anything that you would expect from any operating system is here. It's unable to resolve FreeBSD NTP pool. Interesting. Okay. I know what's going on. Okay, so this is actually very interesting. I'll show you what's going on here. So my time is so wrong that it thinks that the certificate that is used by the FreeBSD time server is incorrect. So if my time was, let's say, 2020 but off by a few days, it will be fine, because the certificates that are used by these websites are actually correct. So you can verify that they are the websites that they present to be. And in my case, my time is so wrong, so by a few years, that the certificates that these websites have are so much off that the SSL validation fails, and the time isn't going to get corrected anytime soon. Okay, let's log in. Okay, do I have SSH? Do I get SSH in default installation? It seems that I do. Okay, this is quite good. Let's see what's my IP address. Oops, that's not how it's done here. So 129.168.10.129. Let's try to log in remotely via SSH. Just a second. So you will have to trust me that I'm doing this. See this. Okay, here we are. I managed to log in remotely, so SSH is configured by default, and this is the interesting part. So I get a notification on the console whenever any user authenticates via SSH. I still have the time issue, so I will just fix that right now. Okay, let's try to set a time that is more correct than the current one. So hopefully this thing will be able to connect to the NTP server. Okay, the way to do this, I obviously cannot SU to root, so I have to log in as root. This will be fixed by adding myself to VL group, but that will come later. Okay, let's log in as root for now. The password is also 1234. Obviously, that's not something that you should do long term. So there is the date command. As you can see, it shows me the time in the year 2018. If I want to set a date, I will have to set it via date command and an argument. So it's 2020, so it's April, it's 26, and it's 11:18 p.m. So let's put on UTC it's 10:18, but I don't need to be so correct. Let's say 10:10. Date set by root, and it still has the same issue. Okay, let's see what's the case now. Freebsd pull NTP or let's see if ping in general works. Oh, that's interesting. So ping in general doesn't work. So I was wrong about time, unfortunately. Let's see why that's the case. Okay, I have a local name server. That must be the unbound thing that I installed. Let's add another DNS server here. I shouldn't have enabled this thingy. There is this system config of some sorts in BSD, but I don't know. Anyhow, the way to fix this is this. etc resolve.conf. Here, if you have all this funky stuff, just add another name server. Let's call one way to do this is just uncomment this line. I hope you know how to use VI. I hope you do. That's pretty much what I can say. I don't know. Okay, here we are. Let's see if the NTP thing is working right now. So it's not working yet. Obviously, it will work in a few minutes. I hope. If it automatically tries every few minutes or every 30 seconds or whatever, it will work very soon. So right now I have this thing working. So it might have worked. I don't know. If it doesn't use certificates, it might have worked even before. But what I'm certain that any other things like curl or whatever uses HTTPS and certificates would never work. So what's the status of NTP? Date. Okay. Is it running? No, it's not running. Interesting that it's not running. Okay, let's start NTP date here. So FreeBSD has this init system that is etc-rcd, and with running etc-rcd NTP date start, we get this service that sets time once. This is not the NTPD service which can provide the NTP server to the network. Anyhow, after doing this, we have the correct time, and I'm not sure, but it might have worked as well with the time initially being way off. I'm not sure. Uptime is correct, so this is not a way to cheat, and it will not work in that regard. If you thought that this is a way to have like 2-year uptime, that's not, unfortunately or fortunately, that's not the way to do it. Okay, PKG is the way to update the packages on the system. The only package I have is the FreeBSD handbook, so I should not have upgrades, assuming that I installed it just right now. And there is another tool. So FreeBSD has this separation of the core packages and extra packages, which are ports from Linux, and the core packages are maintained by FreeBSD developers. And FreeBSD update is the way to update these things. It has two commands in it. So FreeBSD update has the fetch part, where you check if there are any updates on the internet, and you will see that there are, apparently. This will take quite some time on slow computers. I'm not sure how long will it take here. I hope it's faster. It's inspecting the entire system to see which parts need to be updated. And I'll just show something interesting in the meantime. So, this is a USB mouse which I connected. And you can see that it actually works in the console. And you can select parts of these things. So this is built in the operating system. It's quite fancy. I think you can copy paste. I was fascinated that somebody actually bothered to do these things via these simple terminals. I think it's a power of will. I'm not sure how useful is this on servers in real world. It's nice to have, I would say. Okay, so Freebsd is fetching 688 patches, which have been released since the version 12.1 came out, and my system is going to be updated now. And I will actually install these patches and reboot, and just to prove that everything boots fine. And then I will remove one hard drive and prove that we can boot without one of these 4 drives. Okay, so it's fetching the new files now. As I said, this process is unfortunately quite slow, but it has to be done only in every few months. So most of the updates actually come in the forms of new packages in the extra parts, and these updates are just every 2-3 months or so. So these are not so common. So Freebsd 12.1 I think came out in December or so, and there have been 3-point releases, so let's say once a month maybe, or once in 2 months you get these kind of patch release. And since I'm upgrading from the original 12.1 to 12.1 patch 3, I have quite a lot to update, and in normal cases, if I actually followed these releases, I would have much less to do. Okay, so this is done. The patches have been downloaded, the files have been downloaded. We have second stage of the updating process, which is Freebsd update install. Okay, no, it failed. Ah, damn it. Okay, let's retry this quickly. Okay, it actually succeeded now. So the patches are getting applied, and you can see this on the screen. This will take some time. I will be asked whether I agree with this, whether the files that have to be updated or added. Oh, it's a P4 already. Okay, very nice. I need to update another Freebsd machine I have. Okay, so these are the files that are new files, and these are the files that are going to be changed. These are the binary files, and some of them are going to be headers, etc. So this is quite a lot of files, and this is just a note to you to make sure that you know what you need. And when you install it, it will actually notify you if you made changes to the config files, that the config files that you have changed have to be manually adjusted to the new versions. Anyhow, the disks are working quite nicely. The LEDs are blinking, and hopefully this will be done rather sooner than later. As you can see, this is done, and the only things that is remaining, obviously we don't want to roll back, is to do reboot. And when we reboot, we'll get the new version running. What you will observe when it boots is that it will offer 2 versions of the kernel. You will be able to still boot the older version in case there are any problems, just like with Linux, just like with any sensible operating system. You have a fail-safe option to boot the older version in case the new version isn't working correctly. Okay, time to boot. So let's see if we have these kernels that I spoke about, that we can choose the new one and the old one. If the update installed successfully, we will be able to do that. Okay, this is the pre-boot. And now we have the default kernel and the previous one. Since there are two there, you can do key number 5 and you can see that's the kernel.old, and I obviously boot the new one. I mean, I expect everything to work, but in case your system fails for whatever reason, I mean, it would be sensible to keep the old kernel working for a while. I'm not sure what is this MPT thing, probably some power management related stuff, but it hangs on this for quite a while. Might be some kind of secure boot encryption module, whatever Intel thing. Yeah, I have no idea, but it hangs here for like 30 seconds until it happens. But compared to the initial boot process, this is nothing, right? It doesn't happen on Linux. That's what makes it interesting. And here we are again. As you can see, okay, let's get rid of this unbound, local unbound that I mistakenly enabled because I didn't know it's going to mess my things. So as you can see, oh, the name server is correct here. Okay, this is then fine. Local unbound is enabled here, and I have my original name server here. So this thing is, I don't need to disable this, never mind. Okay, let's then verify that I have the correct release here. So P3 is the kernel, P4 is the userland. You can see with FreeBSD version that it's P4, but you have different parts. So for this camera I obviously need a lot of text up there for it to focus. Anyhow, there is an interesting tool that you can use to verify whether the update installed successfully. This is the FreeBSD version tool. And with FreeBSD version tool, you can check the kernel version, the running kernel version, it should be the same because we rebooted. The first one is obviously the installed kernel version. And you have your old version backed up, but that's not displayed here, and the userland version. So when we installed the P4 patch, it actually had the P3 kernel because the kernel didn't change with the P4 patch, only the userland parts. So I have the P3 kernel and the P4 userland, that's fine. They can be a different version if there are not enough updates. If there are not any updates for the kernel, then it remained on the same version, obviously. That makes a lot of sense. My resolve conf is fine. I can install things, I can do whatever, but there is one more part that we need to check, and that's the removing the hard drive. As you can see, my hand is here. I'm going to remove the hard drive right now, and it's gone. As you can see, hard drive got removed. No problem, no issues. The hard drive is obviously here. It's here, it's out. The system is still running. There is no drama, nothing. I mean, no crashes. RAID 5 working exactly as was intended to work. I can reboot it a bit later to prove that it actually works even after rebooting. But I want to show you one more thing which I really like, and I'm not sure whether this was working on Linux or not. I was, if I recall it correctly, it didn't. So I didn't have hot plug in terms of getting the drive back on. And here, look at this. And after it spins up, I'll actually get a note here that the drive is back, and the changes on all the other drives will be synced to the drive that was missing. So there we go. RAID 5, software RAID 5, working perfectly. No issues, no problems. I'll just prove. I'll just do another demo that you can just remove any drive you want, and the RAID will be working as well. I'll reboot for that demo, and the rest will be done over SSH. Then I don't need to do anything else. in this way, very inconvenient way, by the way. Okay, I'm rebooting. I'll remove the drive after I reboot. Okay, let's leave it here. As you can see, the drive is missing here. I have only 3 IBM hard drives. IBM hard drive is obviously their Seagate. So, and let's see how does Freebsd boot with only 3 hard drives installed. The first drive is missing where you would expect the UEFI partition to be. That especially the first drive is missing, but you can take out any drive. It's going to be the same thing. Okay, let's see how will this thing boot. 3, 2, 1. So the first stage boot succeeded. I can just skip this. I can make this faster. It just works. It just works. And I have no idea whether this can be manually configured on Linux to work as seamless as it does here. I'm not sure. It might be, it probably is possible. There are probably guides to do this. But it's not even a question of whether it can be done. In FreeBSD, this is done with a simple selection in the installation. I want RAID Z1, I want RAID 5 on these 4 drives. And everything else is set up automatically in the installation. I don't have to care how this is set up on the disks. I'll just tell him, do this on these 4 hard drives. I don't care how you do it. And that's why I like it. That's why I like it so much. And for the record, I will be putting this drive back when I get the login screen. So just to show you how it behaves, it will sync whatever logs were created while this drive was missing. It will just sync those logs. It will not sync the whole thing as you would want it to do. Okay, so the drive is back now. Wait a few seconds for the controller to start the drive and for the FreeBSD to detect it. That takes like 30 seconds. The drive got detected, the sync is happening, and the sync is done. All the boot logs were synced to this drive, all the things that were supposed to be synced, and the 4 disks are operating as they should. And that's it. That's how you configure the server with 4 hard drives, with 4 trays, to run not Linux but a Unix-like operating system called FreeBSD with RAID 5, despite not having RAID 5 support on the hardware controller. I'm going to shut it down now, and I'm going to stop the video recording.